Tips on how to care for hydrangeas. What to do in the wintertime and what to do in the springtime. How to care for your hydrangea. I planted this one last year, and then of course for the winter it completely dies off, and then you're left with just the sticks, and you might think to yourself, what do I do with that? Well, don't do anything. That's tip number one. Just let it like that for the whole winter. And I am located in Michigan, so our winters can be a little colder than some of the other areas in the country. In the springtime, you're still left with just sticks, but then look at this. It starts to bud on those. If I had cut them down to nothing, the plant would most likely still grow up. As you can see, it's growing up from the center. But by not cutting the sticks, I'm getting buds all up through that way. Now, this part looks a little dead to me. That one, if it doesn't get any new buds on it, I am going to cut it down. So tip number two is cut off any dead parts that don't have any buds on it. I started watering this. Not until the springtime, not till around April or so is when I started watering it. Might have even been the end of April. We get April showers, so it was already raining. I was just relying on the rain. So you don't have to like start watering it right away. You can wait for a perennial like this and start watering it when you start watering all your normal flowers. Once you plant your annuals, or if you planted any new plants and you're watering every day, then you can start watering it. I planted two more hydrangeas, one at this end of the garden and one at the other end. So of course, if it's a new plant, the tip is you have to water it every day. In fact, the day that you put it in the ground, you might want to water it even twice. I usually water it in its pot, plant it in the ground, water it again when it's in the ground, and then a couple hours later in the same day, I give it a little bit more water, because there's always that transplant shock that happens to plants. Here is my second hydrangea that I planted. This is a new plant. As you can see, it has like the purplish blue blooms on it, and it also has a pink one, which I love. I love when they have different colors. Now, if you get a pink one and you want to have the purplish blue blooms on it, all you have to do is hammer some nails down into the center of it, and it will draw from that and change the color of the blooms. So I just love these. My mom always had one, and what she did with hers, which is something you can do, is she used to cut it down because she didn't want it to get too big in the area that it was. She would cut it down to about 4 inches. And then every year it would grow back, and it would be perfectly symmetrical the whole way around, because it wasn't up against a wall or anything like that. It's kind of in the middle of a flower bed, kind of like this. And it was just beautiful every year. So that's another tip. You do not have to let it keep growing and growing and growing, but it has to be the right kind of hydrangea. Make sure you do your research on which kind you have, because if yours only blooms at the end of the branches and you cut them off in the fall, if you are like, oh, they're dead, and you cut them all off, it might not bloom the next year. So this is the type that I can trim down if I want, or in this case, because they're baby plants, I want them to get bigger. I'm going to let them get bigger, and then eventually I will start trimming them down, but they will bloom every year because it grows from the center up and it blooms throughout the season later on. So let me come back to this plant. So see how it has these brown sticks from last year. I could have trimmed them to about that 4 to 5 inches and they would still have gotten buds on it like that. And then of course the new growth would be in the middle. But I want this bush to get a little bit bigger before I start doing that. Once it's a little bit bigger and more established, that's when I will start cutting it to a certain height every fall. Please like, comment, and subscribe to my channel, and we'll learn all about gardening together.